Hello, I'm Kevin Doheny, and I'd like to welcome you to this first Creating 5D radio broadcast. Whether you're a previous friend from the Global Ascension Center Juice Bar broadcasts or a new friend, however you came upon this, it's a wonderful thing that you're listening today and have an interest in creating this new paradigm or 5D. I, along with my co-creators Larry Bazell, Inelia Benz, Ili Pandia, and Louise Rooney, are in the process of establishing a website called creating5d.org, which will serve as a platform in which all of us desiring to live in this new paradigm can come together, network, collaborate, co-create, build communities, and simply create this 5D together. The site is up, and you're welcome to visit, but understand this is a work in progress, and we're not done or ready for announcing to the whole world just yet. Soon, though, the site will feature forums, blogs, video classes, teleseminars, music, and a marketplace, and possibly even a dating section later on, as we understand how difficult it can be to connect with partners who are in sync with our consciousness. And, no doubt, we'll come up with even more things to add to this dynamic site as we play together. Now, anyone who knows me probably knows that my gift, in addition to being an all-round techie, is my crafting sound to convey consciousness. And though this program today is an audio experience, and possibly an audio and visual experience on some future broadcasts, it's nevertheless the sound which is of the utmost importance. And there's no greater marriage of sound and consciousness than when someone is coming from their heart and projecting that consciousness out into the world through their voice. Thus, this show. Whatever form this Creating 5D show takes, it is the intention of all of us involved in producing it that it serve as a continuous wellspring of inspiration for the Creating 5D community. We intend to seek out and present the brightest lights in consciousness that are contributing to an empowered and beautiful future for us all. And yes, that bright light may be you. As I tell people when they ask about how to make the best use of one of my CDs, I say, it's the easiest medicine in the world to take. Whenever you're guided to, just listen. And so it is here. Today, the Creating 5D team is delighted to have Lance White join us as host for our show. Many of you know him from his BBS radio weekly show, A Fireside Chat with the Zany Mystic, which he created back in 2006. Welcome to the show today, Lance.
Thank you, Kevin. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you guys. So the first thing I'm going to do is welcome everybody to the first broadcast of Creating 5D Radio. This is basically every moment is an historic moment, and here we are in another one. My name is Lance White, and I'm your host. Today we'll be talking briefly with Inelia Benz about the intent and creation of this new show. Then we'll be talking to our first guest, Teal Scott. During the last 20 to 30 minutes, I'll be asking Teal questions which have been submitted below. I doubt that there are many here who do not know Inelia Benz, but for those who might not, please go to her website, www.ascension101.com. Inelia is here to raise the vibration of the planet, so let's welcome her vibration onto the show now. Hi, Inelia. How are you?
Hey, Lance. Thank you for hosting this. This is amazing. I love it.
Well, thank you for asking me.
Yeah, so much has been happening with regards to the Global Ascension Center and also with this new community, the Creating 5D community. One of the things immediately that we wanted to continue with is the radio show, which is like a hub of communication, right? For people to have a place to go to connect with the intention and the intent, and also the vibration, and also to give a platform for those individuals who are here And one of the things, Lance, that I know you do is to discover and to look and find what hasn't been discovered, and the individuals and people who are extremely working really full time on the planet and on themselves and their tools and things, so that it broadens all our education and all our viewing and knowing of viewpoints. Expand. I love your shows.
Oh, thanks. Well, I love having you on them too, and you've been on quite a few now, so it's just been a lot of fun getting to spend time with you on the radio, on the telephone, and chatting like this in a kind of a relaxed, personal way, and I like that. Yeah, because we're talking to ourselves, and we're talking to everybody that's listening now and in the future, and we are all one. So, there is no real separation. It's just an illusion.
It is, yes.
So how did this new venture come about? Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this has been a huge morphing and transformation into a 5D configuration. We are creating this, right? We are coming in, and individuals who are coming in are experimenting, they're looking, they're processing anything that comes up on themselves and on the group. And it's very much different to the old community of the Global Ascension Center, in that the energy lines for the Global Ascension Center from the beginning had to be kept very much in my control, because it was a request from Gaia to set up the land where Source, Gaia, and person could meet and become one. So basically we're talking about sacred spaces, yeah? And it was for the entire global community, for every person and being on the planet. It's a collective tool, or owned by the collective. So it couldn't really be owned or run by a group, yeah? So when we started the community at the Global Ascension Center, and many people came in to simply coordinate fundraising events and ideas and just communicate with each other. And that evolved into the actually building a community in and of itself, just expressing and exploring ways of working together in a different vibration, different structure. But because I was still holding all the, quote, power, unquote, energy, at a very, very physical level, the URL, the links, the hosting service, very practical, physical parts of it. I also was given power by others in taking decisions and running the thing, right? So that wasn't exactly the new paradigm structure that we were trying to create. And because everybody came in with that intention, what happened was that it had to dissolve, it had to be taken down, disassembled, yeah, and reassembled again in a more vibrationally more resonant way of the higher vibrations, the empowerment, where everybody is equal, where everybody is self-empowered and has power over their environment, over their workplace, over the energies that are coming in. Everybody has a voice, and nobody's voice is silenced. Yeah. So that's the morphing that happened, and everybody in the community was invited, and this is one of the calls, right? We're inviting everybody who has been in the community actively and taking part to come in and continue with that intention, because that intention hasn't gone away. The intent of building the 5D community hasn't gone away. It's still the same, and that's why this happened. It was facilitated by all of us through situations and different things that happen within the old structure to really pinpoint and identify where was it dissonant, and the dissonance was the energy structure. So that's why that was taken down and restructured in a way that's completely different. It's like open and empowering, beautiful energy.
I totally understand, because as you know, when a paradigm is created, the instant it's created, it seeds its own destruction. When it starts to become fixed or rigid, it starts to get like a dried twig rather than a green bough that blows in the wind. And so we've talked many times on the shows about the old paradigm and the patriarchy, And one of our mutual friends, Lucia Renee, wrote that beautiful, beautiful book on it, Unplugging from the Patriarchy, which is one of the best reads I've had since I've been on the radio show. So it really is about unplugging from existing structures that are halting or limiting, and expanding and feeling the expansiveness that really is who we are.
Correct, yes. Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you're working on some other projects as well, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm working on a lot of projects.
Yes. Any that you'd like to share with us today?
Well, I'm collaborating with different individuals around the planet and different groups as well. Obviously, creating 5D is way up there on my time. You know, it's like it's really a lot of energy is going in there because of the enthusiasm and the passion and the yes, this is it, this is right. You know, this is going to be extremely effective to raise the vibrational level of the planet, and that's where my energies go. The other one that I'm really involved with is the Awaken Academy. Awaken Academy is an academy for women primarily, but men can come in and buy the course after the courses and tools and everything after they've been aired. And so those are the two main group ones. And individually, of course, I'm writing a novel. I've just finished doing a series of talks, which will be released in MP3 as well, with things such as covering the topics of love, sex, and soulmates, which is really an important topic. And it's also a door to open the empowerment of each individual. So we're looking at, through those, at ways in which we can process programs and stuff and really become empowered.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Now, with your school, or with the mystery school that you were talking about, can I call it a mystery school?
It's not really a mystery school. It's more like an academy. It's like a boot camp.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That conjures up images, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can you explain so that all of us have a better understanding? I understand what it means to empower women, but what about the people, the males, and those who are more balanced with the male and the female sides, feeling that they're left out? Can you address the need for the balance to shift from the patriarchal structures to empower women today, and why that is so important?
Yeah, everything's fluid. I mean, nothing is written in stone. For this present moment, we saw energetically that it was necessary to do the support system for women, because women, having been at the bottom of the food chain at a collective level, need a bigger push upwards, or more tools and incentive and way to move forward than the men do, right? That's
right.
One of the things. Secondly, in order to do that, because we're still at a collective level very much programmed with the patriarchy with regards to sex, to gender, and to sexual orientation, when we put a group of men and women together, those energies, which are still very much programmed in us at a very, very even genetic levels, will kick in if the groups are mixed.
Yeah.
Not so much when there's just one sex, because we're not talking even about gender here. We're not talking about sexual orientation. We really are talking about sex, as in what physical sex do you have in your body. So those programs, we're having a period of time within this, and this project is to make sure that those programs are kept on hold, as it were, or looked at without having the energies of men in there.
Yes.
It's very, very simple. We don't have that energy of masculine physical sex inside that structure, because it becomes extremely distracting for women to have that in. And all the programs kick in and everything else. Yeah, all the genetic and social programs will kick in.
Yep.
And so it's just to facilitate that push without any distractions at that sense. But men, of course, will have access to everything. All the material that's been given, men will have access after the calls to download those and listen to them. And it will be an amazing experience also for men, because this gives them an opportunity to learn and to be in a space of pure female energy. Mm-hmm. So the man will have the ability, the capacity and ability and opportunity to be able to download a call that was made by all women female energy, and they will be able to have like the doors wide open into, every man has had this experience when there's a group of women in a room and they walk in and they all like look at them and the conversation changes, the energy changes, right? Mm-hmm. The men have had that experience. And this time they'll be able to come in and have a look and listen in and experience the energies without that energy having been changed because they're there. So there's an amazing opportunity for men to learn directly from the female experience.
Well, all I can say is it's about time.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about the other day was that women are connected directly to source. When a baby comes in, when the soul enters the body, and you've told some very interesting stories about your own experience coming in as a newborn.
Right.
That connection is really a direct connection to source energy, and even though we know that we have lived or may have experienced being female and male in other past lifetimes and future lifetimes, in this particular lifetime, if we are in the male body, then that gives us a certain perspective, and it tends to be programmed to be logical and left-brained, where the intuitive and loving and compassionate right brain is a feminine aspect. So we know there are many men out there that are in touch with their feminine side, but it really is heavy programming for men to be aggressive, and we can see that throughout the world in the games and the violence and the wars, and just about anything you can think of has that energy of aggression and destruction. So, right. And in addition to that, the feminine, the divine feminine, which is the highest aspect that we're working towards attaining and connecting with, has been written out by the patriarchy. So we have been receiving distorted information about our true heritage, and it's a great loss that we haven't been able to connect with that divine feminine energy directly. We have to go through, we don't have to, but many people have been told that they have to go through intermediaries that wear, a certain garb and say Latin things and do things like that. And no names will be mentioned, but
right.
That is it has become a very sick, distorted field on the planet, and I
Indeed.
believe that it is in the process of collapsing from its own corruption. So this is what happens when we give away our power and we worship, we turn it over to others. And this is one thing that you mentioned, that this is about empowering everyone, and that eliminating that feeling of worshiping this one or that one or gurus or teachers or leaders. We can love every person, but we're really loving ourselves in that person.
Exactly.
So that is the love that we need to turn back as if we're looking in a mirror. So we're looking at, let's say, you, and that love that everybody feels. If we can just hold up that mirror and say to ourselves, I love myself as much as I love Inelia. Oh, my God. It could even be as simple as, I love myself as much as I love my dog.
Yes.
And if we could give ourselves just a percentage of the love that we give to our beloved pets and our dearest friends, we would already be shifted into the fifth dimension or beyond.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah.
So, well, what else do you have going that you'd like to share with us? Is there anything? What about the energetics of this time? Are you reading into 2013 as being a momentous period of time for all of us?
Yeah, I was looking at the energies the other day because, as you know, if you get my newsletters, you'll find that I had a lot of attention on the chemtrails and having that intent in our own selves. Everybody can have that intent that we do not agree with the chemtrails. We do not accept them or allow them in our planet. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was looking further, and I was seeing all the amazing amounts of trillions of dollars and that are being spent today, every single day, on the planet to pollute it and to keep it the vibrations low and everything else. And I totally understand that all that investment is to make sure that those individuals who have chosen to stay asleep, because the vibration of the planet is racing so quickly now that it's really hard to stay asleep when there's so many alarm clocks going around, right? Mm-hmm. So people take pills and stuff to stay asleep, so take that pollution. However, I had a couple of aha moments the other day. One of them, as I was walking down the street to go and get my little boy from daycare, was that it was the decision to split the collective into two, right? But that decision, so that the sleepers could stay asleep and the people who are awake can move on and continue and really create this empowered reality as they wish without the weight of the sleepers. I looked at that and I realized, hold on a minute, we can change our minds. As a collective, we can change our minds and say, you know what, let's just do the whole planet. Let's just do everybody and everything. We don't have to continue with that decision. We can change our minds at any time.
Right.
And the other thing that came in, the other aha, was, well, one of the things that was, excuse my French, pissing me off was that we're all here, and the people who want to move into empowerment and expand their awareness are having to do a lot of work, to keep their physical bodies detoxified, to keep the chemtrails stuff out of their bodies, the fluoride in the drinking water. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. The foodstuffs, the sugar, the wheat, toxins that come in and make you really dense, so your physical body has a really hard time evolving and expanding its awareness. And that reflects, again, makes it difficult for us. So we're having, anybody who wants to stay awake is having a lot of effort going into and a lot of things they have to do to stay awake, And on the other side, there's all these trillions of dollars, our own dollars, by the way, that are being spent to keep the masses asleep.
Right.
So they're having it, the ones that are asleep are having it so much easier. And I thought, well, that's not right. That I don't agree with that. So that's another point of empowerment right there. It's like we have to become conscious of it. Once we become conscious, we can send in our intent of what we really want. I want us to have an extremely easy time of expanding our awareness, filled with that joy like love, and being able to exist from there, because that's what we are, without having to do so much, right?
Right.
To be able to be there and stay there.
Right, absolutely.
Just looking at that and just seeing it and making that decision affects the entire planet. And so that's what I would say. That would be something for today.
Well, I'm totally in alignment with that, and of course, the idea of being pissed off hits me frequently when I see the chemtrails overhead. But I have worked through a lot of my anger issues around that, and of course the GMO foods and the rest of it, and it's a bottomless pit of disturbing elements that are in place here. So the more disturbing and limiting, the more we will bounce out of it as we continue to hold the intent to raise the vibration and remain in a higher state, which is not necessarily in 3D. So we can be walking around in a higher dimension and still have chemtrails, and it's not a contradiction.
Exactly.
But one of the things that I was thinking about along with what you were saying was that we can also withdraw our physical support at the 3D level, and that could include not working for a corporation that is not honoring who we are, taking a risk and just quitting and, seeing if we can fly as an angel. It could mean pulling all your money out of the bank, which is, that's a major, major cause of what is going on today. If you think about it, almost every bit of money that is used for an exchange here is controlled, and it goes to the banks. So, we are programmed. So if we hold our energy and convert it into things that are beneficial for ourselves and to the collective in service to all, then I think that we're going to find that will become like a firestorm that will halt the activities of those people who think that they're running the world.
Right. Because, and thank you for saying that, because that reminded me of the power paradigm. When I was very small, I saw this movie, and I know we have to be real quick now because of our guest is here.
Oh, right, okay.
So I'll do it really short. When I was really small, I was watching this movie, and it was the crucifixion of Christ. And it was an old movie, a black and white movie, I think. Or I was watching it on a black and white TV, which was in the 60s or 70s. And I could see all the masses of thousands of people on the streets lining up, and then these Roman soldiers and Jesus with his cross, right, and being hit and tortured and stuff. And I looked at my mom and I said, well, that's totally illogical and ridiculous. Look at those thousands of people. Just a few of them can take the soldiers down and liberate this person, right, and everything will be fine. And she looks at me and she said, but they think that they can't because they've been told so. And she told me the little baby elephant story where, the little baby elephant is tied to a stake in the ground with a rope, and it pulls and pulls and pulls, and eventually it gives up, right? And then when they're grown up, the elephant is tied up with a tiny little rope and a tiny little stake, and it doesn't get away because it thinks it can't. Yeah. And the other thing she said was that, and also she said, of all those thousands of people, some of them will get killed. The first ones that tried to take the soldiers down because they were so professional soldiers, and none of them wants to be that first person. Yeah. Right. Nobody wants to be the one that gets killed.
Right.
So So it's like really interesting to see that it's an illusion, yeah? As a collective, it's an illusion, the power thing. Anyway, that was it.
Well, is there anything else you want to say before we segue into our first guest?
No, that's it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks a lot, Inelia.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, well, now we have a very special featured guest. Her name is Teal Scott. Teal was born in Santa Fe, New Mexico in the year 1984. She arrived with extrasensory abilities such as clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, the ability to manipulate electromagnetic fields, and the ability to communicate with thought forms. Her parents, both wilderness rangers, accepted a job for the National Forest of Utah, not knowing about the intensely religious climate there. Word of her abilities got out, creating fear in the religious community. Due to Teal's extrasensory abilities, she was inducted as a child into a local cult by a family acquaintance where she was routinely ritualistically tortured and programmed for a period of 13 years. She managed to escape from the cult at 19. Since then, Teal has acted as a spiritual catalyst, inspiring others to explore the incorporeal, eternal nature of their true selves. Today, she leads workshops and will be in my hometown, Santa Barbara, on April 20th for a synchronization workshop. She is also the author of The Sculptor in the Sky. You can find out more about Teal on her website at www.thespiritualcatalyst.com. So, let's welcome Teal to the show now. Hi, Teal. How are you? Are you there, Teal?
I can hear you just fine.
Oh, well, now I can I can hear you.
Okay, good.
Oh, good. So we're together. You're on the line again, and we're talking.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Well, I thought for those people who don't know your story, it seems like an interesting place to start, that you did have an interesting childhood, and I'd like to hear more, and I think other people would like that too, about your beginnings with the extrasensory senses and abilities and what that was like.
Well, to begin with, I didn't really enjoy it very much. It was basically torture, seeing as how fitting into a world not knowing what to do with all that information coming at you and having no kind of mentor that could teach me what to do with that was quite difficult. I was seeing everything I still do as if it was not a solid object, but like a vibration. So everything was just these energy fields bleeding into one another. And walls do not seem solid to me. They just seem like vibrating energy that are more dense than generally the rest of the objects that are around it. I was seeing thought forms, of course, which has made it so that I could act as a spirit medium, which was not so much fun as a child when you don't understand that adults aren't so interested in interacting with things that have passed on.
Right.
Yeah. I was also seeing life pass also, which led to quite a few interesting interactions with adults where I'd walk up and tell them what they were a match to in the future, and then, of course, when it would come to be, they'd be twice as frightened to let their children hang around with me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
My poor mother and father had to drag me around also with all these hypersensitivities. For example, I have clairaudience, so I have a very hypersensitive sense of hearing, and so I can hear tectonic plates moving, and I can hear thought forms. So when you get the classic form of a ghost, basically, when they're talking, it's extremely loud to me. So sometimes it's interesting to hang out with me even this day and age because I'll start talking really loud suddenly because I'm trying to talk over, in my mind, I'm trying to talk over a lot of different conversations when I don't realize that other people don't hear those conversations.
Oh, wow. Do you get messages for the people that you're talking to while you're having that conversation?
Oh, yes.
That's interesting.
Yes, I also astral plane instantaneously, and I have become better over the duration of my life at, I guess you could say, grounding in my body, but I'd do this thing where I'd astral plane instantaneously and just faint. So I'd abandon my body, which is quite interesting also as an adult that has a child that does that. You're constantly bringing your kid to the doctor's office trying to figure out what is going wrong.
With fainting spells.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So one of the things that I was wondering about was how do you manage that as you started to grow up? How did you learn how to manage that? Did you have assistance from your guides or from a team that was assisting you?
Yeah, my joke is that I stopped being an independent indigo and I started listening to all the beings that are around me. They had all kinds of advice about how I should deal with that. And I also went to China and learned a good deal in China about how to deal with this kind of thing, because here in the Western world these things are seen as mental illness, and over there in the Eastern world it's seen as a gift. And so they've been working with these types of energies and with extrasensory people for so many years that they have developed ways to teach people how to cope with and utilize these abilities. So I learned a great deal when I was over there visiting.
Wow. Would you be interested in sharing any of those experiences in China?
Yeah, for example, well, they can teach you how to deliberately move energies. And so when I went over there, my favorite story to tell about that is that an extrasensory typically is being overloaded with information constantly, and so we tend to withdraw and want to wear hoods all the time and not want to be around great big crowds of people, and we get overwhelmed and sick all the time because we don't actually know what to do with the energy coming into us. And so we developed this idea in the Western world that empaths and people who have extrasensory abilities need to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. But it's entirely the opposite of what is correct and what the Eastern world teaches, which is that you should learn how to absorb all of it and then transmute that energy. But that's not something that occurs to us because we are sort of limited in the third-dimensional idea that if you've got 100 people, the consciousness of the 100 people will overwhelm the consciousness of the one. But that is not the truth. So when I was over there, I was taught how to pull in energy from crowds of people. The master that I was studying over there with, Master Wan, actually took me to a train station and made me stand in the middle of the square as this train moved in, and hundreds, thousands even of people came flooding off of this train. And instead of doing what I usually do, which is to run the other way and kind of protect myself, he made me stand there and then breathe in all of their energies. Wow. And then send the energy down out my feet. And it was the first time I realized that I could do something with it. So I wasn't a victim to it. I could do anything I wanted and absorb unlimited amounts of this energy, and it would have no negative effect on me because I was consciously transforming that from a negative emotional or vibrational thing into whatever I wanted to transform it into. It's just not something that ever occurred to me before I went there.
Wow, that's something really important for all of us to hear, because I know that many of us are sensitives, empaths, intuitive, and have elements of these higher senses that are natural and developable within us. I used to always wonder why I couldn't walk through walls and why I couldn't fly, you know. And I know that somewhere along the line I got programmed to believe that I couldn't, and that kind of got stuck there. So I've tried a few times, but my nose gets sore when I bump it against the wall. So what are some of the other techniques that you've used and learned that might be helpful for those of us who are, A, wanting to develop those abilities, and B, those who are trying to discover why they're crazy and they don't know how to channel them?
I think the best technique I learned is to stop caring what other people tell you about these abilities, and sit down and just, it's, in the beginning, it's like, well, I'm going to try this just in case it works kind of thing. And instead of basically running away or having mixed energies about receiving that information, you turn in the opposite direction, facing them completely, and just stop caring, basically, for a minute about whether the information you're receiving is true or not true, because that's a problem. We've got this addiction to the idea of truth. And just write down anything you perceive. So my favorite way to do this is to tell people to keep like a journal and to write down any psychic impressions they have throughout the day. Just write it down and then close the book. Don't even think about it. Close the book and then put the book away. And then, like a month later, go open the book again and see how accurate your perception is. Mm-hmm. Because we usually will get these impressions, these psychic impressions basically, and then we tend to negate them or argue with them or doubt ourselves. Now, if we can just stop doing that for a minute, write these things down as if we're not attached to whether they're true or not, and then come back later, you will have incredible confirmation about just how intuitive you are. And that will go a long way in terms of developing the abilities.
Very nice, very nice. Well, that ties into working on processing our fears, and then also working on recognizing our belief systems and how they create limitation and lack.
Only my favorite subject, right? That's the shadow work.
Well, you know, abundance is an issue for a lot of people, so that's something that I think you work with in your workshops, don't you? With I saw one of the videos up on abundance that you had done.
Yes, I work with it quite a bit, just because when you're in the vibration of total allowance of source energy, then abundance is a natural byproduct. You can't have one without the other. Mm-hmm. So you will not see somebody who's completely in alignment with themselves who does not manifest abundance. So you can't say that getting more spiritual is a contradiction to developing abundance. It is hand in hand.
Yes. Absolutely. And the other thing is that I know that the mind plays tricks on us. And, again, those programmed beliefs tell us that we need to have certain things that we may not need at all. So creating the space of abundance, one of the things I do is I acknowledge or allow that everything I have or everything I need is here and provided for me in every moment. And it may not look that way, but it is all there. And, you know, that's how the birds and the trees and the grass all seem to function. So I recently had an aha moment about hoarding stuff, that it was not necessary to hoard things for some kind of financial collapse, at least for me. You know, that I'll be provided for. I've been provided for all my life. I have a roof over my head, you know. And so abundance is a perspective, and by shifting my perspective, I see that I am in abundance at all times.
Oh, yes, but it's quite difficult for many people to understand, which is why I usually teach people to go towards whatever it is they want. So a lot of spiritual teachers who have arrived at the point that you've arrived at, where you understand that things are not necessary, certain things are not necessary, people can't get there straight away. And a lot of times when spiritual teachers tell them that that is the truth, they figure that that's where they should be, even though they aren't. And so I tend to enable people basically to manifest whatever it is they feel like manifesting. So is it truth that a person does not need $1 billion? Yes, but if I tell them you don't need $1 billion, they're going to feel that immediate emotional confirmation that that doesn't feel good to them right now. So if that's the case, then I'll help them manifest it, because I understand that if they manifest that $1 billion, they will be standing in a new point of perspective, at which point they may be ready to understand that they don't need it. But for some people, that intermediary step is quite necessary. And I think in the spiritual field, we tend to pull people away from that prematurely without understanding that that's not where they are, and they may need to manifest something to understand that they don't want the thing they have manifested.
Right. Well, you know, one of the problems with manifesting what you want is that it can become an endless chain of wants and fulfillments that, of course, eventually ends up not satisfying. So that is part of the spiritual process or the awakening process, is to create what you think you want, and then you realize that, well, I didn't really want that. I wanted something else. And so it is important to go through all those little steps.
Oh, yeah, this is why I wish that people would make peace with the idea of desire. If you make peace with the idea of desire and want and understand that it will always keep coming, then you can understand that there's no place you're trying to get to, which is why we suffer relative to want. We see it as sort of an end goal. We don't understand that it's more like a rainbow. No matter how far you chase it, it's always going to move out beyond where you can see. So the finish line is going to continue to move. And once you sort of make peace with the fact that the finish line is going to keep moving, it doesn't cause you pain that it keeps moving, and so you have a different relationship relative to want.
Yep, absolutely. One of the things that we would be interested in hearing is about your induction into the cult. And the reason why I ask you this is because a lot of people have also experienced some form of abuse or ritual abuse, and that is something that needs to be looked at or felt or allowed to surface without judgment. And I know I was in a cult for a while, but it was only abusive in the sense that they were taking every penny I had and using me for a labor. But, I mean, that sounds like normal life to me. Would you care to talk about your experiences there and the religious people that were so afraid of your abilities?
Yeah, I'm most confused about which aspect people want to know about my childhood. This group that ended up basically inducting me in is an offshoot of the LDS religion. They believe that priesthood, which is any gifts from God, things like the extrasensory abilities that I have, are a gift of the God directly to Joseph Smith, and from Joseph Smith directly to men. And so women cannot hold priesthood. So when I started exhibiting these abilities, and in the small town that I lived in, the word of these abilities got out everywhere. It was like everyone went a little bit nuts, and the information spread like wildfire, and I got on the radar of this particular cult that believes that if a woman is exhibiting these abilities, it's a gift of the devil, and it's their direct ability to, or I guess charge, not ability, direct responsibility to rid the earth of evil. So they took it upon themselves to try to torture it out of me because they believe basically that through suffering you perceive the light of Christ, the same way as the Catholic penitentes do. Yeah. So that's why the penitentes will flog themselves or cut themselves or crawl for miles across the floor, because they believe that if you suffer as Christ suffers and spill your own blood, you will be absolved in the light of Christ. But it's an misunderstanding, of the endorphin release that takes place within the body. Because that sure as hell does feel like the light of Christ when you're suffering, as anyone who has gone into shock can attest to.
Right. I was also a member for a brief while of that church. But one of the things that I found out was that they frown, and that's to put it mildly, on anyone that is not heterosexual. So apparently their God doesn't accept women or homosexuals in the church. So I veered away from the church because I didn't feel that was a correct belief to hold for any kind of exclusion especially of women, is a mistaken, is a distorted belief.
Yes.
So you left the cult at 19, and how did your journey progress from there?
Very slowly. Well, I guess it was quickly, but according to my perception, it was quite slowly. I was a completely damaged person. I was still toying with suicide constantly. I had no idea how to interact with society. I had to learn how to take care of myself, which was something which we were programmed not to be able to do so that we didn't get free. Mm-hmm. And so I had to learn all kinds of skills that I guess a person normally does learn before that point. And I didn't know that it wasn't appropriate to have sex with every person that crossed your path if they did something nice for you.
Right.
Yeah. I had to be basically re-educated, and I still had no idea what happiness was. And I had to admit in therapy even that this person who ended up inducting me maybe was doing these things just because they liked to hurt people, not because they loved me and not because it was for my own good. And that was one of the most difficult beliefs basically to let go of, because as somebody who's part of these cults or somebody who's in a victimhood vibration, your way of surviving it is to attach some kind of meaning that helps you get through it. And to me, the meaning that I attached to it, they fed it to me, but I attached to it, was the idea that they were doing this for my own good. And when I had to let go of that, I had to look at the very real, I guess the reality of what I was going through. I mean, the reality was I was getting chased through the woods by a sociopath who could have murdered me at any moment. It wasn't that he was chasing me through the woods to teach me how to get away from demons. And so everything became a lot more frightening in retrospect, and my post-traumatic stress disorder kicked up big time. I couldn't sleep at all, and I was super hypervigilant, and I'd go into dissociative seizures. So I struggled with that for a lot of years, and then therapy worked quite well, traditional therapy for ritual abuse, and I ended up in a group for, I guess, women, so it wasn't just me getting the counseling. It was multiple women, all who had suffered ritual abuse. And that was really healing to watch them up to a point. It was healing up to the point where I realized that some of the people there had been there for 20-something years trying to recover, and they weren't any better than I was.
Oh, wow.
And I started realizing, because the general consensus in the psychological community relative to those of us who have been ritually tortured is there are just some things that you're going to always have to deal with. There's just some things which you're never going to get better from. This has actually injured your brain. Your brain has wired itself differently. And, of course, it doesn't take, most of the Western community does not yet take the opinion that the mind is plastic.
Yes.
So neuroplasticity is a reality, but it's not one that the Western world has adopted. And so their idea was is that there's just a limit to that which we can do. There's a limit to the happiness we can receive and experience based on what we've gone through. And that did not work for me, and it did not fit in with the universal truth which I came in with.
And what was that universal truth?
The universal truth is that there's nothing on the face of this earth that is not plastic in nature, meaning malleable. There is nothing about this physical reality that cannot change before your eyes. The only thing that limits us from sprouting wings is the fact that we don't believe that we can.
Right. Right. Well, yes, and I'm totally with you on the idea that change not only can be, but is literally instantaneous. There is no need to continue on with any kind of belief system that says anything that keeps us from being healed, because that is our state, and those are just programmed thoughts that keep us in the same place, in the same relationship, in a state of decay, and manageable and controllable. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing that you do a lot of work that empowers other people, especially, in your groups that you hold.
Oh, of course. And I don't do this work just by virtue of the fact that I feel some kind of personal connection to empowerment. I do it because the universal truth of this life is empowerment. Uh-huh. If I'm going to express universal truth to the totality of the human race, then the answer is you have control over everything in your experience. So the universal truths are, in and of themselves, highly empowering, because the nature of the universe itself is empowering.
Right. In retrospect, when you look back at your experiences, does that fit in with the idea of having chosen a certain soul path with various branches off of the tree that you had chosen before you came in for the experience of transformation?
Oh, 100%. In fact, I think it's the most important part of why I am the one that is talking to people nowadays. It's because I came in and, by all means, came into the kind of life which is the worst a human can experience. Mm-hmm. And so, if I am standing on a stage telling you that I remember choosing this for myself, if I'm able to swallow the pill, if I created this, mm-hmm. that means I can help people to swallow that pill in their own lives, because that's what separates most people from the ability to take control of their conscious creation, is the fact that they say things like, well, maybe you may be easy, it's easy for you to say that, but what about me? You know, what about my child who got cancer at 3 years old and died? What about the fact that, you know, I was abused by my father for 13 years? How can you look at someone like me and say that I create my own reality? Mm-hmm. And it doesn't come well from people who have lived a nice life, but it comes much better from somebody who's lived a life like me, because in order to teach these things, I have to also have swallowed that pill.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes, I have had a couple of those pills myself. So, you mentioned earlier about the astral plane. As I understand it, there's a lot of negative energy and negative entities that occupy some aspect of the astral plane. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, when we are talking about, this is the whole problem with spiritual talks, is that so many of us use the same verbiage to describe different things. And so many people listening see a contradiction because they don't understand that we may be explaining totally different things but calling it the same name. So when we're talking about the astral realms, what I am visualizing, basically, what I'm talking about, that is a fourth, fifth, and potentially even sixth dimensional reality. Oh. Now, the fourth and fifth dimensional reality is more of a thought form reality. And so it is the symbolic forms of the thoughts that we have thought in our day-to-day life. And so they take a much more accurate symbolic image to what's going on in our daily lives than even our daily lives do. Mm-hmm. So maybe in my day-to-day life, I'm feeling uncomfortable because I'm having to go relive some of my memories. Now, in the fourth dimensional reality, that feeling could take the symbolic image of like a giant whale. And so when I go out of body, I may have this interaction with this malevolent whale, not understanding that it is the symbolic representation of my childhood memories. Mm. And so most of the things which we encounter out of body, which we call malevolent spirits, are nothing but manifestations of our fears. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if they're a manifestation of our own fears, there's really not much to have a problem with, because instead of seeing them as these beings which have complete control over us, we can understand that even outside the third dimension, which is the physical dimension, the most pervasive law in the universe is the law of attraction, meaning that you can only experience something you're a vibrational match to. So if I'm basically in control of my vibration, then I can become in control of what I'm a match to. And if I've encountered something like a malevolent spirit outside the physical dimension, I'm a match to it. I created it. That gives you some level of power at least. Mm-hmm. And if I've created it, then now there's a lesson there. So now I can approach this interaction not like I have to run for my life from something that's malevolent and is going to kill me, but I can approach it as, oh, I obviously have some sort of vibration to work on. Where is this a vibrational match in my life, and how do I change that? So if you do those kinds of things, you have nothing to worry about outside of this dimension. Victimhood mm-hmm. literally cannot exist within this universe. It is an illusion which we have created.
And you said that it continues on into the fourth, the fifth, and sixth.
Yes.
Okay. Would you talk a little bit about how you perceive that?
How I perceive it continuing.
Some of the things that you mentioned about the fourth remind me of creations that are there. For instance, on the fourth, there may be a couch that I had in an apartment I was in 30 years ago, and it dissolved at a different rate.
Yes.
And so there's a different time frame for that kind of creation, the thought form. And so there may be a couch that I had dissolving, and then my new couch is in there overlaying or overlapping. So it can be kind of a confusing place.
Quite, but that only usually happens when we're unfazed. So the most difficult part about being out of body or interacting with other dimensions is that you have to phase completely with the dimension for any of those dimensions to make sense. If there's any kind of an overlap, it means we're not properly phased. And which is why when you get out of body, a lot of practice has to be dedicated towards learning how to come into the same vibration as the current dimension that you're on. And then there's different information relative to every single dimension that you are on. So in certain dimensions, you can access things that happened previously in this current life. In other dimensions, you can access things that have happened in every previous life you've ever lived. And unless you are deliberately setting the intention and phasing with that one piece of information, you will experience more of a quantum state. And then you cannot make any linear sense of it. And so the issue is not really the experience itself. It's when the experience is then relayed back to third-dimensional understanding, the brain cannot unscramble that information which is not linear in nature.
Yeah, right. We need to have a quantum understanding which requires being out of 3D and not in our heads.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, for lack of a better way of describing it, the way that I lived the majority of my life is by having one foot phased and one foot unphased with the physical dimension. That's why, to me, walls look not solid. So I'm not properly phased with the third dimension, and that serves me in many ways, but also gets in my way in other ways.
Well, a lot of people are asking questions like, how do we tap into the higher dimensions? How can we phase shift in and out? And, of course, we know that many indigos and crystals and the rest, starseed, walk-ins, and so on, have come in essentially with an intent to create a shift on the planet, which is what we're all we're looking at in this ascension movement. Would you be interested in talking a little bit about the cosmological view about Gaia Sophia ascending and how we're creating this new experience and what it might look like?
Oh, perfect. So every single change that you see here in the physical dimension occurs because of desire. So over the past 1,000 years, humanity has desired to come back into alignment with what it truly is, which you could call that humanity coming back into alignment with source energy. So we have, as a human race, we have basically worked our way vibrationally to a point of furthest most separation from that which is source. And now we have turned the corner back towards source, which is essentially what, December 21st, 2012 was. Just as the calendar you have in your kitchen wall does not cease to exist after December 31st. The Mayan calendar does not cease to exist on December 21st, 2012. But this date, and it's not just the Mayans, it's several cultures across this entire world that we are living on, set this date as basically the end of a long count period. Then just as the calendar begins again on January 1st, for these cultures, another long count period begins. And the reason we chose that day for the end is because that day marks the turning point in Earth's history into another period of consciousness for the human race. So that date basically marked the apex of human consciousness at farthest distance from source consciousness. And so in the same way, that day marks the day that we turn the corner back towards source. So it represents the turning over of life, the renewal of life. So basically, it's a realignment with the vibration of source energy. And what that looks like for humanity is several changes, because if you understand that, that's the process that the entire universe is going through, is this return towards source. So if this is what's happening universally, and the law is that if things are going to stay a match in terms of space, and when we say if something shares the same space, we mean by that is in order to experience the same reality, things must share the same vibration. So in order for that to happen, that means you must match the vibration of everything that is currently in your reality. And a reality for humans right now is that we must stay a match to Gaia. And Gaia is going up in vibration, which leaves human race one option, and that is to align with that vibration or cease to exist. So what you will see in accordance with this vibrational shift on Earth is many Earth changes in the environment here, changes in the patterns of the way that our current in the ocean flows, patterns where we see many changes in the tectonic plates on our planet. You'll see eruptions. There will be all kinds of changes here which are more difficult for humans to stay compatible with. And those that do stay compatible with it are the ones which can raise in frequency and not resist those changes. So this is why there are many people building Earth ships right now. I don't know if you've ever heard of these, but it's basically, we've developed the technology already, and it's happening in several places around the globe where people understand that what we're basically headed towards is another ice age. Mm. It's difficult to understand for most physical humans, seeing how we see that there's a lot of temperature increases happening, but this is what happens basically before an ice age happens. So what we're doing basically is building these atriums, which can be giant, and you can even make the ceilings of these atriums appear like sky, so you can have a jungle-like environment underneath the surface of the Earth. And so those of us who are in alignment with that, instead of resisting the way the Earth is changing, will be able to maintain food sources underneath the surface of the Earth, which will eventually freeze. So here's how humans stay a match to this. It's by caring about how they feel, because if you care how you feel, then you're dictating your vibration. And if your vibration is raising, then it will be a match to the shift. And so you'll be a match to potentially being part of these communities that live in access to these Earth ships.
Interesting.
That's just one small example of how this will work.
Wow.
But the increase in frequency also increases consciousness, and so humanity will live in a state of unity. There will be no need for government. There will be no need for police. Instead, humanity will rely on the government that really does exist, which is the universal government, which is just the law that which you project, you will see the match of in your current reality. So the justice, basically, ultimately, that we will live with is the fact that anyone who vibrates at a frequency will experience the manifestation of that exact frequency. So it's not going to be anybody locking someone away in a prison.
Right. And I take it that includes the elimination of the need for killing each other in wars, and the need for the control of some kind of financial system and increased sales and marketing that seems to be so prevalent.
Oh, yes, all of that. It will decrease all of that. But here's the issue. Right now, when we're in this little period where we're headed back towards source energy, and so many are ascending into this new vibratory reality that many are calling 5D, we run into a problem, which is that many people are in resistance to this very thing.
Right.
And if you're in resistance, you must manifest proof to that effect. And so the question is, though there are many of us who are ready for that kind of society, there are also many who do not want that society by virtue of the fact that they fear it. They do not trust it. And so the question in many of our minds is, do you have to manifest another war in order to understand the kind of peace you desire on this planet? We're asking that of those who are resistant. Because there may be a great many here during this transition, because there's a light and a negative side to all things. The light side is if you focus on what feels good, you continually focus on what you enjoy looking at, you understand that you create your own reality, then guess what? You can't be a match to any of these negative occurrences on this planet. But if you don't understand that kind of thing, it is true that you could manifest a kind of resistance, which we have never seen on this planet to date. Government control.
Oh, yes, we see that ramping up daily.
Oh, yeah, you were talking yesterday when we spoke briefly about the nanotechnology, which has a lot to do with this. Right. Would you like to elaborate a little bit on that? One of the things I was thinking of as you were talking just now was that in addition to the natural occurrences that Gaia is implementing, there are the forces, the negative forces here, which are manipulating the weather and controlling information. So it's hard to tell whether an earthquake or whether some kind of tornado or anything is actually being caused by the planet, Yes, so that of course pertains to the nanotechnology, but I don't know if everybody who's listening has heard about nanotechnology. To the positive side, nanotechnology has been used by a great many extraterrestrial species that are technologically advanced. So we're talking the ability to manipulate things at a molecular level So in the world of Star Trek, there are machines called replicators, which produce practically any physical object. So you can basically create out of thin air a weapon or whatever food you'd like to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So this sort of technology has been considered sort of exclusively the product of science fiction. Today, of course, it has become a very real possibility. They call it molecular manufacturing. And if it ever does become a reality, it will drastically change this world. So atoms and molecules basically stick together because they have complementary shapes that lock together, or charges that attract, just like magnets do. As millions of these atoms are pieced together by nanomachines, a specific product will be able to take shape. So the goal of molecular manufacturing is to manipulate atoms individually and place them in a pattern to produce a desired structure. So the first sort of step in this is to develop nanoscopic machines called assemblers, where scientists will program and manipulate atoms and molecules at will. So we could implant nanotechnology into people that assemble cells and thus creates new tissue in a patient. This is the positive side, of course, of nanotechnology. Patients would drink fluids containing these nanorobots, which are programmed to attack and reconstruct the molecular structure of cancer cells and viruses. Nanorobots could also be programmed to perform delicate surgeries, such as nanosurgeons could work at a level 1,000 times more precise than the sharpest scalpel. So there's a universal rule here in the third dimension, that which poisons also can heal. And it also works in reverse. One cannot heal without also being capable of poison. So when we are thinking about nanotechnology, we need to remember the creation of the atomic bomb, which was created with positive intention. And we all know how that turned out. So here's the negative side of nanotechnology is this. Nanoparticles are so small they could easily cross the blood-brain barrier, which is a membrane that protects the brain from harmful chemicals in the bloodstream. So nanotechnology could potentially kill people by virtue of poisoning them. Nanotechnology could also allow us to create more powerful weapons. So I want you to imagine this for a minute. Imagine the molecular-sized robot that is programmed to enter through someone's skin pores to destroy living cells. And that would kill a person in a matter of days or hours, or even if we got really good at this, seconds. So without them even knowing they were infested. So imagine that we decide that we don't like somebody like our neighbor. So right now we understand that North Korea is mad at South Korea. So if North Korea decided they were really pissed off, imagine them spraying this nanotechnology over the top of an entire country during wartime. This means in a matter of days, an entire race of people could be extinct. So our question here relative to nanotechnology is it ethical to transcend nature like we could do with nanotechnology? We could develop technology that, for lack of a better way of explaining it, could give us the capability to heal like the comic book character Wolverine, to develop night vision. All of these things are very real possibilities and have taken place with an extraterrestrial species. So, as usual, it's a question of whether we can consider these implications now and avoid them, or find out the hard way after it is too late.
Well, given those who are basically ruling the world through financial manipulation, and from what I can tell, it's at the behest of a negative ET race, they have this kind of technology already. So,
yes, they do.
Yeah. So, super soldiers and cloning and anti-gravity and travel beyond the speed of light and the rest of it all exists, within the planet. It's just very, very cleverly concealed and kept from us. And our own technology is kind of doled out in tiny increments, almost infinitesimal increments that are so unnoticeable that they really look like a model change more than a change in the essence of things. So the free energy has existed for quite a long time, and, at the very least 50 to 100 years. And if you go back to Egypt and Atlantis and the other civilizations, it's always been here. So the free energy that exists is not being used by us, and it is being used by those who control the technology. So the big question here is who would control the nanotechnology and who controls it now? And as you were speaking, I was thinking about Morgellons being a perfect example of nanotechnology either gone awry, or it's a test to see how those nanobots can replicate inside the human body.
So true.
Yeah.
You know why I laugh? There's a reason that I laugh at this, which I want to explain to people. we spend a lot of time in the New Age community, especially those of us who understand the validity of many of our conspiracy theories. We spend a lot of time focusing on the fact that we are victims to those that are in control, but we have missed this, which is that maybe they will have to learn the hard way the truth of oneness of this universe, but the truth of oneness is still a reality. And so, as these people who are in control poison and manipulate those who are in the general demographic, they are doing nothing else than injuring themselves. And that is something which they must come to face with. And they will.
Yes. Yes. I hope within my lifetime. I thought I'd be walking up the crystalline staircase up to the magical star worlds around 2012 or so, and maybe I am, but it's a different experience, and it involves 3D.
That's really cute. Just as you said that, many people who are listening to this thought, I want a ship.
Well, you mentioned ETs, and we both talked a little bit about it. I know that many of the people that I talk with have had experiences, multidimensional, interdimensional, and so on, with extraterrestrial races that are said to be positive. And a lot of people have the belief system that the ETs are, the good ETs are out there, watching us and waiting for, I don't know what, some magic moment when the consensus shifts within humanity that allows them to interact with us. So I know I know you've got a much more interesting direct experience of this. Would you like to share that?
Well, the reason that we could call this good and bad, war between good and evil, the reason that those extraterrestrials who have the advancement of humankind in their minds, who are here to benefit the human race, the reason they don't instantly come in and blast away the negative ones on their ships is because we understand that no matter what we do, the most pervasive law in this universe is the law of attraction. And so even down here, we have this idea of victimhood. So we have the idea that a little child out in Ohio did not attract the experience of being taken up onto a ship and abducted on purpose. Uh-huh. So we see her as a victim. The problem is, we miss the fact that potentially that little girl out in Ohio was being abused by her father, and so she already worked her way into a vibration of victimhood. Now that vibration of victimhood, because we understand free will, is seen as an invitation. So basically, we cannot impose ourselves on free will. So if somebody, even though they're not doing it deliberately, if someone has complete free will and they are thinking thoughts which make them a vibrational match to becoming a victim, you cannot interfere. Why? Because the law that trumps your physical action law is the law of attraction. And so those who the reptilians and the greys have access to are those who vibrate at a super low frequency and thus invite them into their experience, which is why you will see those extraterrestrials who hold a very high vibration, who are here to help humanity. They will be affecting humanity in an individual way by sort of helping people to find personal freedom. Because if you help people to understand they're the conscious creator of their own life and to work their way into a positive vibration to such a degree that they are now in a vibration of empowerment, they can no longer be a match to the reptilian or the gray, because the law of attraction will separate them. So that is how many extraterrestrial species are helping humanity. It is not by virtue of coming down here and imposing ourselves, which is how it would be seen universally. If somebody was vibrating at a vibration of victimhood, and we got in the way by stopping that process, we would be imposing ourselves on free will. Why would we ever do that to something we are in alignment with the best interest of? We would never do that to something that we love.
You mean interrupt their free will?
Yes, which is what it would be. See, and this is interesting because physical humans don't enjoy this perspective. They think, no. If you see something like that, you better get in the way.
Well, right.
If you love us.
Right, exactly. For instance, if somebody saw their child being beaten or whatever, they would do whatever they could to stop that, right?
Oh yes, and if you're in the vicinity, most likely that means the desire of the individual has lined up with you being there in order to stop the circumstance. But that is not the same as interfering with free will, because if they have, by virtue of their desire, chosen to align with that desire to such a degree that they now manifest you in their space, then it is highly likely that you are meant to be the person that steps in between them and whatever is headed towards them. Mm-hmm. But there are a great many people who are not a match to that. They are vibrating at such a frequency of victimhood they could not even be a match to somebody intervening. And so if we watched those people and intervened in those scenarios, we would be imposing ourselves on free will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Now you mentioned that the various positive ETs, and I'm aware that there are probably more than we can count or even mention, are working towards are working with individuals. So would that be at the non-physical level, or interfacing with some at the physical level, or a bit of both?
All of the above.
All of the above. Okay. All right.
But people don't understand that it's not physically possible for many extraterrestrial beings to exist here. For example, with the Arcturian race, being here physically would not be possible because the nitrogen in your atmosphere would enable their bodies to dissolve almost like a slug in salt. And so physically existing here is not a possibility for many, so their choice is to project forth into an incarnation. So their source stream basically feeds a human body. So you would not perceive there being anything different between that human and any other human other than a sort of different eerie feeling that you get because it is your source self, your eternal self, your soul that is telling you that something is not quite so human with this person.
Right, right. So as I understand it, there are millions or maybe hundreds of millions of people who are incarnate here that come from other dimensions and other star systems, right?
In my opinion, not quite so many. It's
not
actually
so many.
more rare.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, in a sense, we're all alien.
Well, yeah. See, there you've got that. The connection between the human genome and Pleiades.
Right. I love the Arcturian energy. Whenever I've read information that comes through a good, solid channel on Arcturus, it resonates really almost the highest of any of the information. It's such a clean, intelligent, and profound energy. Is that your experience of it? You have Arcturian heredity, right?
Yes, much more than that. But yes, I hope it comes across that way.
Well, let's hear about the much more. I want to know the much more part. Well,
at the sake of many people thinking that I'm a complete nutcase, this is something I've been quiet about, and it was not something which was sort of the plan to begin with coming in here, was that most of us who are here, who are direct source streams from other places, we're not going to reveal our identity. Because human race was not ready for it, and it was not seen as beneficial to most, because, if people are not already saying, oh, well, you can do it because you're a Jesus or Messiah, then they say, oh, no, you can do it, but I can't do it because you're not from here. So I'm doing what's called a soul fork, which is part of the reason why I understand that I chose my physical experience here as a human, as a child who was part of a cult. So what happened basically is an extraterrestrial being, which currently still exists, it is who I really am, projected forth into an incarnation. So we call that a soul fork. And so now this physical body, which most people see when they see Teal, is a projection of that extraterrestrial being which still exists. So when I go to sleep, I go home.
Wow. Oh, I love that. That is so beautiful. I love that. You just completely threw me off my game here for a moment, because it was such a beautiful vision that I just felt it. I felt like I was at home myself. So from your perspective, it must be somewhat difficult to work among the density that is here due to the preoccupations and the belief systems it's difficult for all of us, regardless of where we come from or how where we are in the awakening process, I think I can honestly say that most of us listening or tuning into this later will agree that this is a difficult incarnation at best.
Yeah, so the nickname we use is glutton for punishment. Most people who are here are the thrill seekers of your dimension.
Right. Well, I often say that it's like humanity has not yet quite come out of the primordial ooze.
Yes, and if we from other places in this vast universe that we are currently living in understand the concept of unity and oneness, then if there are any aspects of ourselves that are suffering, regardless of what planet they exist on, then our own suffering is not over until we aid that suffering into a space of alignment, which is why we come.
What is your sense of the shift as it takes place from 2013 on?
It just gets better and better.
Is that something akin to the idea of the golden age that we theoretically have just turned into after a 26,500 plus year cycle?
Oh, hell yes. Humanity is about to liberate itself completely. And who would not want to live honestly in a third dimensional reality? See, when we talk about transcending the third dimension, we make an enemy of the third dimension, but it is such a beautiful place. And so here we are in the third dimension, and who would not want to be here when we do not experience the aspect of ourselves that are limited and shadow-like in nature? So if governments and controls don't exist, if we don't have to show up at jobs that we hate, then guess what life feels like? It feels like going skiing. It feels like going surfing. It feels like eating the best food you've ever eaten. It feels like connecting with people and being able to touch and interact with coitus, with someone that you're in love with. That's what it feels like.
Of course, the distortions would have to be eliminated at that point where we have clean air, clean water, good organic food, and we're not pressured to be a certain way or take a certain form in life due to our belief systems.
Yes, and we are trending that way. Part of the problem, it's not really a problem, part of the gift, but also the issue with the wave of information that we're getting is that it is not new that the world has been like this. It's not like people suddenly started to control people in higher and higher numbers now, or our food was more poisoned now. It's actually less poison now than it was in the 50s, but no one knew it. So part of the information age is that we're starting to awaken from this terrible nightmare which we have actually been engaged with for a very long time. So that gives us the perception that things are getting worse and worse and worse when it's totally not the case. More people, if you take a sort of snapshot of the globe, more people are waking up and becoming organic. More people are waking up and caring about the way that they feel. More people are waking up from the drug haze and realizing that the pharmaceuticals that we have relied on so heavily are killing us. But that awakening is happening more and more and more thanks to the sharing of information. So it is not as doomsday as many would believe.
Well, it does seem like there's a divergence of intents going on here, in that the science is attempting to create an event horizon, and that has to do with the moment when artificial intelligence becomes smarter than man and basically saves us. We know that's a pretty crappy idea. I mean, if anybody that's watched the Matrix trilogy knows that. And then there are many who feel that going into an organic alignment with Gaia Sophia and the energies and the spirit and the nature spirits is going to revitalize our ability to create without all of the the stuff that we're told we need to have in order to heal or feel good or the rest of it. So what happens to the aspects that seem to be coming down the pike from the negative side, the service to self side?
It gets worse and worse and worse and worse until even the creators of such devices don't want them anymore. And then it disappears.
So we probably will have to observe from our perches, from our seats in 5D, we'll probably have to observe a lot of things going awry, and I'll just work on allowing it.
Yes.
Yes.
Because as you allow it and as you hold as your object of attention what you would hope for these beings, you will actually weight the scale and bring them towards it.
Very good.
So if we continue from our 5D purchase, as you put it, to watch these people creating heinous things for themselves with an aspect of feeling sorry for them, focused at the problem, we will add to the problem. So we need to focus on what we don't like, let it just sort of give rise within us to what we would prefer for these beings, and then focus entirely on that, and thus help them align with it. So they're not on their own. We need to understand this. Those of us who are coming into ascension are meant to aid those who are more resistant in nature over to what their highest good is.
And how do you see that working with people? Is that an expanding situation presently?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good.
And it takes both good and not so beneficial forms. So people who are super in alignment are not attached to outcomes, and so they help just because they love the process of helping. They love holding as their object of attention the highest state for another human being. But there are a great many people who will hear what I just said and say, oh my gosh, it's my direct job then to help other people, and so I'm going to try to force myself on people who are resistant, and as if they have to change. So we're making an enemy of where they are, and that will never go well. You will not be received well from that standpoint.
Well, from my own experience, it takes quite a bit of energy just to change and shift within myself. So I've kind of learned how to give up the idea of trying to change anyone else or change the world, and accept through shifting within. And that it acts like a rock thrown into a pond of water that radiates out and ripples back.
Well, aren't you selfish? I'm sorry, I had to poke at you because that is the best idea that anyone has come up with.
Oh.
See, it is human perspective that says that is selfish, and I always like poking and prodding at that in a humorous way, because if you understand the law of oneness, then the way to change everything that is to change yourself. So the best thing people can do is to ignore what everyone else is doing and to find alignment themselves. And by virtue of doing that, your only focus that you're going to be able to focus towards somebody else is towards their highest good.
Yep. So beautiful. It's just beautifully said. And it has to be said and resaid and resaid and resaid and said in different ways. So.
Well, that's good because I like repeating myself.
Oh, good. I love it too. Is there a particular thought that is coming to mind for you now that you would like to talk about?
No.
Okay.
I would tell you if there was.
Oh, well, I figured you would. That's what I like about you. Okay. One thing that came up for me, I'm getting this thought form, and it has to do with the difference between source energy and a creator. There's a lot of confusion on the planet about creator gods and God, and religions have co-opted the truth and used them to brainwash the people here. And there's a lot of use of the word source energy and creator and the word God. Can you, what's your experience of the all that is, that you can help us to see the nature of this reality, which appears to be a hologram?
Oh, very much so. The way that I perceive it is that we're all using the same name to describe the same basic thing. Some of us have more illusions or less illusions relative to the purity of that thing. But you could see, the reason I use the word source is because vibrationally the word source is actually the closest to the vibration of what is actually going on here, that which we call God. So we all understand that to call something a name is to make it an it, which is to lose the essence of what it is. It is not an it. Mm-hmm. Because it has boundaries and source consciousness does not. But if you could imagine for a moment this ocean of infinite energy, infinite meaning there is no boundary, so there's no shores at the edges of this ocean. The ocean has no edges. And this ocean is continually within itself expressing in different ways as currents, as waves. And those expressions are the different dimensions. Those expressions are physical humans, table, chair, book, dolphin. So we are absolutely inseparable from this source energy. We are source energy. We are source energy manifested, which just means currently expressing itself as a physical human. And so the problem with the idea of the creator, which is why that is probably my least favorite word that is used, is that if we use the word creator, we have in our mind the idea of some kind of a sculptor that is creating us. So we have instantly made ourselves separate from that which is source energy, which is a misunderstanding immediately.
Okay. That kind of ties into one of the questions that was submitted for the show, and that is, does absolute knowledge exist, and are there beings who know everything? Does the source know everything?
Yes, the source knows everything up until this point. The issue is that source is not entirely aware of itself, which is why we're even here in the physical in the first place. So we are telling God more of what it is, source more of what it is. We are telling it more of what to become.
And that implies that the God is evolving.
Yes, and I would say that there are some beings that know all of it, yes, but I could say that you can know all of it as well. Because you are not separate from source energy, if you tune yourself to the frequency of source energy, then you know everything it knows. I should say you know everything the larger aspect of you knows.
Right. Right. And we can tap it directly into that, once we realize that we're not the limited bodies and minds and egos and the rest of it that we think we are.
Yes.
Okay. Good. I might as well get into some of the questions here because, otherwise we won't get to them. Would you like to answer a few questions from other people?
No, I hate answering questions.
Oh, okay. Well, then we won't do that.
I'm kidding. Oh,
I'm
no.
just kidding. I know you do. And I love it when you answer questions. Okay. I'm just going to go at random here. Art from Ramstein, Germany asks, could it be that when we reach the vibration level of 5D, we will be able to experience multiple timelines simultaneously?
Exactly. Oh, that was a hard one.
Oh, my. Okay. What about beyond 5D? Is there such a thing as, because I know one of my guests has, more than one guest, has written about the concept that we're capable of tapping into the higher dimensions outside of 5D, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, that we're designed to do that. So are we taking this whole idea of dimensions in a linear fashion and forgetting that we are in all dimensions simultaneously? Yes. Okay.
These are hard questions. They're just so straightforward. There's no more elaboration. The answer is yes.
Okay.
We are limiting ourselves immediately by thinking third dimensionally in a linear fashion when we ultimately exist on all of these dimensions, and you could be there right now.
Right.
You are there.
Right.
What's more than that? It's not that you could be there right now. You are there right now. So all you need to do is tap into the aspect of you that is in 6D right now or 7D right now. The only reason we're using the numbers 6, 7, and upward of that is because the brain wants to understand everything in a third dimensional way. It wants to cram it into that box because it can't understand anything outside that.
Right. So technically, if we were just being, we probably wouldn't talk at all. We'd just wander around and be in awe and in gratitude for all that is.
Yes. And communication would be an option, which is the beauty of all of this. When you transcend, like many extraterrestrial races have, into higher dimensional realities, basically all that happens is everything below that becomes an option. So it's an option to be physical. It's an option to use language. It's an option to do all of these things. And when it's an option, the merit can be seen. The beauty of language can only be seen when it's no longer something which limits you.
Well, that ties into another question from Lesia from Santa Fe, who says, I'm a bit confused about the purpose for the current transformation from our 3D reality to the higher dimensions. If we really came to Earth to experience 3D reality, shouldn't we experience it fully?
I love that question.
I thought it was.
I would say this person who has written in this question is more in alignment than most here in 3D.
Right.
See, that is the perspective that many who currently exist in higher dimensional realities have about the third dimension. That's why so many want to get here to physical life, is because of how exciting and how beautiful it is to be able to physically interact with thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And so the answer is, hell yes, we should come here to focus on the third dimensional reality, to embrace it fully, to get what we came here to get out of it completely. So the benefit here, which is what most people focus on, getting into the 5D reality, the benefit is the intention for coming into this third dimension was never to be limited to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was to experience it, but not become deluded to the extent where you think that is all that exists, to the extent that you think that it is all that is. So if you are to truly understand what you really are, then we must basically come into contact, into awareness with our higher dimensional aspects of ourselves as well. But if we do that, then quite quickly we will understand the merit and beauty of the third dimension. And so we will embrace it completely, and we will be living the kind of life that we came here to live.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason that I teach people to transcend, for lack of a better way of explaining it, the third dimension, is because many people who are feeling as if they are stuck here are suffering by virtue of what they perceive in terms of limit in the third dimension. And if they can transcend the third dimension, then they can see the beauty in the third dimension, which they are currently missing. But this is the beauty of Buddhism, or anybody who teaches being in the present moment, is the minute that you focus on the present moment, which is literally being completely in the third dimension, then your life gets very, very good.
Nice. And of course, it seems that we always want what we don't have. So here in 3D, we want to be in 5D, 6D, 7D, and we don't want to be here. We want to go home. We're hated here. Blah blah blah. And then those in 5D, 6D, 7D, and on up probably just can't wait to jump in and feel the embodiment and experience what it's like to feel the sensual pleasures of this planet that are everywhere.
Exactly. Are you ready for me to twist this up on end again? So the reason I say that this person is more in alignment than most is because there's an interesting truth that happens when you release resistance to something. Most of us want to get to 5D because we're in resistance to 3D. So if you fall in love with 3D, if you spend time in the present moment, then anybody who has done this for many years can tell you, guess what happens the minute you embrace the 3D and get in the present moment? Suddenly, the other dimensional realities are available to you because you're no longer in resistance, which is why many people, when they're in the present moment, they experience the disappearance of time. It's because in the present moment, you're allowing the rest of your interdimensional aspect to enter into that present moment. And thus, being here fully in the third dimension, ironically, can actually cause us to come into connection with who we truly are outside the third dimension.
Well, that kind of segues into some of the other questions that she asked about experiencing it fully. And one of the things that seems to stop people is guilt and fear. And we do have a question that came in. I don't have a name for this one, but there are a couple of similar questions. And this one is, I have problems with men. There is a fear and anger since my childhood. When I got older, expected abuse happened. Now I am in terror when a guy approaches me and deep longing to have a loving relationship with men. What can I do to transform this inner struggle or get in alignment with source perspective?
This is an interesting one because the vibration on that message which you just gave me is so low in nature that it would almost be quicker for you to release resistance completely, which is to make peace with the idea that you may never feel good towards men at all. It's an interesting way of going about it, but I have people do this. Let's say that we've got an extreme fear of losing our child. Sometimes I tell people to go to the worst case scenario and become okay with it.
Right.
And so I would do that. If that means go to the worst case scenario, meaning I never have a relationship with a man, make that okay for you in any way that you can, not lying to yourself,
Right,
Tell
right.
yourself truths that make you okay with it so that you release resistance to it, because the universe understands that's not your desire. It understands your desire completely, but you've got so much resistance that if you were to release that resistance, you would align with it immediately, which is why those parents who make peace with the worst-case scenario of their child dying will not lose their children. It's why people who make peace with adoption get pregnant in 10 seconds.
Right, and as you know, the spirit world is real, and you talk to spirits all the time. So there is no such thing as death. If I'm getting that one right, there is no such thing as birth or death. It's a continuum.
Yes, and so we want to release resistance that way, or else we can release resistance by going to the worst case scenario of what happens if a person, like a man, does approach me. So worst case scenario, if anything that could possibly happen, follow it to its inevitable end, and instead of lying to yourself, come up with truths that you actually do believe, which make you feel better about that happening. Then, if you're okay with that, then it's kind of like, this is the only reason preparation helps anybody, is because basically if you have gone there and become okay with the worst case scenario, then you're no longer thinking about 24 hours a day, and so you're not manifesting it as much.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's sort of like, when I came into this business that I'm doing now, where I'm talking to a world demographic, I knew I would be coming up against people who would not like my stuff. That was my current thought. So, I had to release resistance to the idea of being shot in a very public demonstration, which is what keeps a lot of people quiet. And I had to basically, because it was easier for me, rather than to focus on it not happening, because I had so much resistance to that, it was easier to just go to that and make peace with the idea of somebody shooting me in a public spectacle. And now, because I've made peace with it, I don't think about it 24 hours a day. And so it's not part of my vibration, and so I'm not going to manifest it as much. And when you've made peace with that, then, because that's the most prevalent vibration, then you can try to explore masculinity in and of itself. Ask yourself those questions. Question every thought relative to man. Can I actually know? This is where Byron Katie comes in handy. I really like her process for questioning thoughts. So we can question our thoughts about, can we know that this is what all men are going to do? Because we have statements in our mind, even if we're not aware of it. All men are fill in the blank. So you can start questioning those thoughts. And just by questioning those thoughts, you'll be a match to different kinds of men. And ultimately, you will align yourself with a person who you consider a rehabilitatory person. It will be somebody who vibrates high and is male and will change your idea about men.
And of course, there's the aspect of forgiving your abusers, knowing and taking responsibility for your having chosen to come in here to have that experience so that you could transform it and transcend it.
Oh, that's way far away from her vibration. The reason I say this is that most people who are victims try to force themselves into a space of forgiveness, and it is not time, because they have not even allowed themselves to become angry enough, and that is where this particular person who writes this question is. We have not allowed ourselves to get angry as angry as we need to get, and so moving ourselves into a place of forgiveness is premature and will not work.
Very good, very good. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, very good. There's another one here that is, this is a little bit more esoteric or a little abstract, but it relates to the idea of good and evil. And I know a lot of us have issues about those who are doing horrific things to masses of humanity. But this one is, how would Hitler, someone who has done bad deeds or who has caused suffering, heal himself while he is still alive? Is he as much traumatized as his victims, and what would he do to end or compensate what he has done?
He is every bit as much, not even every bit as much, in more suffering than anybody who is ever put in an institution based on his ideas. There is no one that you could have possibly talked to in any of his camps that are suffering to the extent that that man suffered. So the idea of him having to somehow compensate for his wrong acts is a human idea of justice. None of us who truly love him, which we all do from our eternal aspects, would wish more suffering upon the suffering which he already experienced.
Right.
So the problem here is that from our limited perspective, we do not understand the earth through his eyes, and so we do not see the suffering, which is the basis of his reality. And so we want suffering. See, this is our problem. We want suffering to beget suffering. We want him to do something to rectify. But you know what? The peace which has come on a worldwide basis from everyone in the globe watching those atrocities is all the justice we need here. he has contributed immensely just by virtue of what he has caused people to know that they want and don't want. Mm-hmm. So if he was living, the way for him to come into alignment is the same way for anybody else to come into alignment. He would have had to have basically come across a circumstance which caused him to question his own fears, because that is the regime which he created is the basis, the creation that is a byproduct of an extreme level of fear and resistance to an entire race of people. So if somebody had crossed his path, basically, which could talk him and put him in touch with that kind of fear, then he would have seen it as his own problem, not the problem of the people which he's resisting, and then he could have gone to those shadow aspects of himself like anyone else would do with an issue and worked his way incrementally into a greater space of freedom and ultimately potentially been best friends with the Jews that he slaughtered.
Mm-hmm.
But it was more important at that given time for people to come face to face with what they were creating. See, it's easy for a war to end after we see what it's doing, but most of us have to engage in war for a very long time before we become aware of what it's doing. You see this constantly with young children who are 19 who sign up to the war and they're gung-ho to shoot people, and then they go over there and they're face-to-face with their first order to shoot a 3-year-old in the face. And it doesn't matter what they want to do because their superior officer has told them to shoot the 3-year-old, and then they have to think for themselves. And so for a great many people, that is the necessary conditions for them to want peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so universally, we cannot make an enemy of the fact that that person potentially needs that experience in order to find their way to a peaceful state.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't make an enemy of the entire regime, even though for many of us it was entirely upstream.
One of the questions that comes up is about the incarnational process, and somebody was asking if we are going to be able to ever get off of the wheel of life and death, and that's in tandem with some of the information that I've researched, in that the incarnational process may have been tampered with by those who are interfering with it or distorting it, in the end causing us to continually reincarnate or incarnate due to karmic situations that are created while here for the energy that's provided. Am I getting that out right?
Yes, but it is a highly depressing belief. How does that serve us in any way? That belief sounds exactly like a human who comes up with a concept like that because they feel like they're a victim to their own life choices.
Oh, okay.
The answer from where I stand is you could be off the wheel of incarnation right now because it's a choice to come in. You don't see that the idea of making yourself separate from God is a problem, because then it means that God chooses what you need to learn.
Right.
But that is not the case. When we are rejoining with non-physical energy, we choose what we want to experience. So you're choosing every one of your incarnations. And the only reason we perceive karma is because we understand the benefit of expansion. And so if we understand the benefit of expansion, then it serves us to be both the butcher and the animal that is butchered. It's because it serves expansion. It's not because somebody decided somewhere that if we killed someone in one life, next life we have to experience what it's like being killed. That is someone doing it to us, but that is the number one lie we tell ourselves, and we keep perpetuating, is that we don't choose this, that someone's choosing it for us, that the universe is somehow larger than us and is manipulating us at will in accordance with what it thinks our perfection is.
Nicely said. Here's a question from Art from Ramstein, Germany. And he says, in your book, The Sculptor in the Sky, your son Winter was the catalyst in your life. My son George has really been the cause of my spiritual awakening. Do you think the new generation of children recently born will play a major role in the ascension process, and how can we help them to achieve their incarnational goals?
Oh, good Lord, it's a bit of an understatement.
That's what I thought, too. So they've been coming in for... Yeah, go on.
Oh, yeah, we've been coming for a long time, but what happens basically is that when we in our day-to-day lives give rise to new desires, Source itself becomes the vibration of those new desires, and then when it comes into physical, it is the byproduct of those new desires. So we may desire, this is a big majority of what's happening even now, is the 60s movement. So in the 60s movement, so many people were focused on the atrocities that were going on during the war of Vietnam, and they were focusing constantly on what they wanted, which is a united society, free love, free peace, no war, put the flower in the end of the gun. And so what happened is Source aligned with that, and so many of the new beings, which are the projection of Source from that new space, came in with that vibration. So it is true that those who are living in the 60s could have aligned with what they wanted and everything that they desired in their lifetime, but many didn't. They continued to focus on the atrocities. And so the new generation became the manifestation of those desires. And so we have waves of ADD, ADHD, autistic, indigo, crystal, rainbow children. They were the creation of the desire of mankind. And so to say that this new wave of children is the new wave of consciousness within the humanity, within the race that we call humanity, is a bit of an understatement. But for us to help them stay in alignment with that, and you don't need to worry, no matter how hard you pull against them, they will succeed because it is your desire that they do succeed. No matter how much you pull against them, basically, they will succeed. But the best way to keep them in alignment with who they are is for you to teach them by virtue of example how to do that. We cannot raise a child to stay in alignment unless we understand what it is to stay in alignment. So we give them their best fighting shot at it if we learn these principles like we're talking about here today and become the living example of it. And so we will enable them to stay in alignment with themselves and their original intentions.
Good.
Give them organic foods. Put them in different programs because we all know that our current education system is absolute crap.
Oh, totally. How would you change the education system if you could instantly manifest your thought forms?
I would create a school system because, and I would give people a choice, first of all, if they participated in school at all. But we all know that if children stayed in alignment, there wouldn't be so much bullying going on, so most children would want to engage with a peer group that is their own age. Mm-hmm. So assuming that was the manifestation, I would create a school environment where children could initiate learning entirely on their own. That means they're not learning anything that they do not feel completely on fire to learn. Mm-hmm. So I would allow children to specialize. That means today I feel really excited about playing the drums, so that's what I'm doing today. One kid may be that kind of kid who loves science, and so that's what they're learning today. I would not force them to learn things which did not serve their life experience. We cannot really reasonably justify why we need children to understand what 3 + 5 is. We really cannot justify most of the things that we teach them. Why is it important that they know that some stupid, obscure war happened in 1712?
Right.
But, so this is the way that I work relative to children, and here's the answer. Most people who have a child who is terrible at math but awesomely good at sports would hire a math tutor. I would hire a coach. Children have to be and came in to orient themselves in the direction of their passion. Mm-hmm. And the reason we have so many completely screwed up adults is because the adults in those children's lives when they were children pulled them sideways with their current, said, oh, I'm sorry you like playing guitar. It's more important that you understand all this crap and get straight A's in all of this crap that we're trying to teach you. And so children learned that their own desires were inappropriate. And so why can we reasonably expect many adults nowadays to be in touch with their own emotional systems? We've taught them exactly how not to. So our school systems would be ones which enabled whatever they want to do here on this planet. That is really our role as adults. If you want to be fill in the blank, we're going to find every way to help you do that, because we understand that the advancement of our society would happen 12 times faster if people were enabled to just run with their own passions. Now, the implementation of that is a bit difficult because when we think school in general, one goes, well, how does a teacher do that for 1,800 different children at once? But here's the problem. We're expecting a teacher to deal with 30 children in the classroom. How is that a good idea? all we're doing is basically expecting one adult to be a babysitter for 30 children. They can't do any good work with people in classroom sizes that large.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my vision.
And I would add to that to have tutoring on paranormal, on the various clairaudience and higher senses, and encourage kids with dreaming and imagination, and as you said, following their passion and not fitting into some kind of corporate structure that is programmed from birth. When kids are given their vaccinations and set in front of a television set and told to buy Wheaties.
Oh, God, there's a can of worms in my life.
Well, yeah, and they're given baby food that has fluoride in it. They're putting fluoride in baby food now.
See, and I didn't even mention that because that goes without saying. Feeding children food that actually sustains their life functions should not be something that is new to this new school I'm designing. It should be something which already exists.
Yeah.
The fact that we're killing our children with this kind of food is an absolute travesty.
Mm-hmm.
We do not care about them as much as we say we do when we treat them the way that we currently do, feed them the way that we currently do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the turnkey systems are basically designed to produce more worker bees, and
yep.
You can see where this is going. Anybody with two eyes and an ability to think clearly, which I guess that limits the number of people who can do that, but can see where this situation is going, and we're headed over Niagara Falls in a barrel. So
yes.
I'm in total alignment.
So the answer is this: pull your child out of that barrel before they go over the edge, because I assure you they will.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And that gets into the idea of, I know you're a vegan, and I'm more or less a vegetarian, and I am careful about putting foods into my system that have the life force, the energy, the food of the prana or chi into my body, and drinking distilled water or water that is doesn't have particulates in it. So those things are important too. What you put in your body is what nourishes it, and water seems to be a very potent conscious force that can pull a lot of these distortions out of us.
Yes.
So how do you feel about diet in the awakening process and as a spiritual tool?
I feel so strongly about diet, it's kind of ridiculous. I try not to impose my ideas about diet on people because many people are not ready for the ultimate steps when it comes to nourishing their body in ways that are in accordance with their source self. So I tend to work people into it more slowly. But in my own life, I am an absolute Nazi when it comes to what I put in my body. And that's not done from a space of resistance. I realize I used the word Nazi, but it is because when you raise your frequency to a certain degree, you are no longer compatible with lower vibrational things. Mm-hmm. And so you're much more likely, if you try to introduce that, because they're incompatible, if you have a high vibration and you try to introduce something with a much lower vibration like a junk food, you will get violently ill because it's not a vibrational match, which is why I often joke I'm the hardest person to feed. Yeah.
What kinds of foods, because there is a big difference between food that has life and food that is literally death. When I go into a major box store to buy food or, to get some vegetables, I notice that my perception of it is that 95% of it is dead. There's no life force in it.
Yes.
The meats that are arranged there and the canned foods and even the vegetables, they look like they just came off out of a funeral fire.
And most of them did. We abuse our foods. We don't understand that we are an extension of those very things we are putting inside of our bodies, so we don't treat them with any kind of respect. And it sounds kind of odd to the people in the general demographic to treat your red pepper or green pepper with respect, but it is an extension of you. And so if we raise our vegetables and fruits in abusive situations, poisoning them, and raising them with no kind of love, but just producing them in mono farming for mass production, and basically it has an eighth or more, or less, basically, an eighth or less of the energetic force that it would have if you just let it grow naturally, if we had any kind of care for it. So there's much more going into our food. See, this is important that people understand. There's much more going into your food than just the pesticides. It's also the attitude of everyone that interacts with that food. So if there's a farmer from Mexico who's come up here to support his family, who's interacting with these vegetables and is miserable and is treated with poor conditions, then his vibration's going into the food. If we have decided to raise our vegetables in a mono-farming environment, meaning it's the only crop for miles and miles and miles, then it has no exposure to anything other than the same vibration that's around, which is not how things naturally grow. And the insect life around it is going to be less healthy by virtue of the fact that we're mono-farming. And so we're literally just killing it. We're killing it before it gets here.
Well, it is a complex topic, and I'm just starting to read the book called The Thin Torn Garden, and there are probably many people who read that decades ago, which has to do with communicating with the divas, spirits, and elementals, and communicating with the soil, the spirit of the soil. And there's that Russian series, The Ringing Cedars, I think. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's a beautiful series about, I think her name is Anastasia, and she puts the seed in her mouth, and the saliva imbues the seed with your DNA, and it's done in a certain way. It's just quite lovely. And I think that's a matter of raising our awareness. And clearly you live that awareness.
Oh, yes. And I have my moments where I get quite frustrated with it, I assure you. It's not like I'm always in alignment relative to it. 2 months ago, I was laying in the bottom of my shower crying because I was in somebody else's house and realized that there was not a product that I could reach in the house that did not involve some kind of suffering. You know? All of the foods were tested on animals, and I started to go down, instead of keeping my vibration up about that, I went right down the rabbit hole and started panicking about the fact that we live in a society where it is difficult. You have to go out of your way to find things that are not created.
Right. Right. It's really, life is a full-time job, just living.
Isn't that the case?
I have a close friend that has had some experiences with some energy attacks, some dark energy attacks, and I was wondering if that is something that you see some of, and if you can address that in such a way that's empowering. In other words, if it's a victim situation, then that is a different story. But if it really is something that's coming towards one to interfere, then, of course, there would have to be some agreement, too. What is your perception of that kind of experience?
One goes hand in hand with the other. So you cannot be a match to that kind of experience unless you yourself have a problem within you, like a victim vibration present within you, which is an invitation to that experience. So it's not like what this person is experiencing is not real. It is, but it is only in the reality by virtue of the fact that you have previously lined up with it. So the question to ask yourself is, in what ways am I thinking that make me a match to this? Number one is that it can happen against my free will. If you understand that everything is a vibration and that you're lining up with that vibration by virtue of what you're thinking about, and you have the free will to think what you want to think, then if we even think the thought that you need to be protected, then you're instantly creating the manifestation of something you need to be protected against. If you're thinking the thought that something is trying to attack me, even that is the indication that that thought must make that a reality. So we've got like piles upon piles of different vibrations, because basically this is what we call a manifestation, which is the manifestation of previous beliefs. So I'm already feeling like a victim relative to something. Maybe it's something in my childhood that set up this idea that I can get attacked. And then because of that vibration, I've given more credence to that idea, and so I've manifested proof to that effect, and that belief has become more real because of it, and so I've manifested more proof, and because of the more proof, it has become more real, and I've strengthened the vibration and manifested more proof. We can go on forever.
Interesting.
And so our way to back ourselves out of that is to take control back by saying, what ways am I thinking in my day-to-day life that make me a match to feeling like a victim? I got to replace the idea that something can attack me without me inviting it to, by virtue of my focus. See, if I'm the kind of person who likes to turn on the news in the morning, and I'm the kind of person who watches, a person being attacked in an alley or watches the latest report on a new serial killer, then I will develop very quickly the idea that something can attack me without my desire. Something can attack me basically without me becoming a match to it first. And then I am a perfect match to that kind of experience. So there's a lot at play here in terms of this individual's belief about the physical reality itself. We would not be worried about being attacked unless it was a belief that we could be. Mm-hmm. And that's the first problem.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not empowering in some way? That it is impossible to be attacked? This is coming from a very good source,
Right.
I mean, after all, I was 6 years old, fending off a 70-year-old man.
Wow.
Yeah, so when I say, and by all means, most people would watch that and say, oh, my God, this little child's a victim. Look, he imposed himself on her reality. Oh, my God.
Well, it's funny that the more people I talk to, the more relate experiences very similar to what you describe.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that nobody wants to talk about it, and it seems to take so much to bring that up, and so a lot of people create the circumstances to force themselves to bring those painful issues up so that they can deal with them, but then they don't get processed because it's an unconscious process and not a conscious one where you're intentionally going through that. And,
yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're out of touch with what we're thinking. So
right.
I find this quite a bit now where I used to have this belief, this is really important for people to hear. I used to have this belief basically when I was in my teenage years that I was the most unlucky human alive. Like, if I'm in the middle of a field, I'm the person who will get hit by a plane that's crashing. So that was my current vibration, and I didn't understand that I was attracting that by virtue of my attention. But now, basically, I recognize it very easily because I understand how things manifest. So as I'm walking around my day-to-day life, it's quite interesting. Let's say that I get on a radio show and I start talking about my childhood to the extent where I am able to reactivate vibrations of powerlessness within me. So I've connected to that feeling that I used to feel so often to the degree where I start getting sort of shaky because I remember what that feeling is like. Mm-hmm. Because I spent so much time focusing there, suddenly I'm a match to something else. So I'll turn on the television, and the next show that I watch randomly, so you like the word randomly, there's nothing random, has a short that relates directly to my childhood.
Wow.
and then I'd get in my car, so I'm like, oh, I don't want to watch that crap. So I get in my car and I drive away, and guess what? I pass an entire collection of cowboys in a town where none of them live. But, of course, I left my house exactly at the perfect time to be a match to all of them. And it's because I have become a vibrational match to them. But instead of freaking out and thinking, oh, my God, I'm the most unlucky person in the world because all this crap keeps coming up, like, what are the odds, I realized, I activated the vibration prior to this of total victimhood by virtue of talking that long about my childhood experience, that I activated that feeling within me. And so I was a match to all kinds of manifestations that were a match to that belief. And then it's no longer about the fact that I'm a victim and that something's out to get me. I could think that those cowboys are out to get me. I could think that the universe is out to get me because it's just given me a really scary short that was never at the beginning of this movie before today. I could think that if I don't understand the fact that I have lined up with that. So that's why I'm saying the most important question for this person to ask themselves is, how did I make myself a match to that? So what thoughts in my day-to-day life felt the same way that experience felt with that dark entity?
I guess that a similar response would occur with those who are experiencing difficulty with addictions and substance abuse.
People who are experiencing addictions with any kind of substance abuse are looking for relief. So the question is, what do I need relief from? Until you figure out what it is you're trying to run away from and purify that particular issue, the need for the addiction, the substance, will always exist. Which is why, it may be of benefit to put people in a place where they have no access to them. But guess what? If the same issue arises, so let's say I felt abandoned by my parents when I was a child, and so because of that, I am now attracting all kinds of people who abandon me. And in my life, I feel this sense of abandonment. And ironically, when I drink myself into a drunken stupor, I, for 5 seconds, am feeling relief and don't feel that level of abandonment. And until we basically focus on the abandonment issue and get this person to a place where they are starting to manifest for themselves and thus feel the experience of being loved, then they will continue to drink. It does not matter how many times you take that bottle out of the person's life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Isn't it important to make a distinction within ourselves between the story we tell ourselves and the reasons why we're doing things? In other words, something happened in childhood like you were just talking about, and we often build a story that explains, well, I did this because I did that because I did that. And that seems to be a bridge to creating a pattern, a neurological pattern, to repeat those very same forms of abuse, which has some kind of positive feedback. There's something that we're getting out of it.
Oh, yes. Which is why we have this saying in the spiritual community, which is, if you would like to live a different reality, tell a different story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why we need to decide, what am I getting out of this story? Because the only reason I'd be perpetuating the story is if it's serving me in some way. So maybe I only see love through pity, and when I tell this story, people pity me. So then I can work on that, find love in other ways, and no longer a need to tell the story. Then I can replace it with something better. See, I could tell you the story. This is why most people get sort of frustrated. I could tell you the story that I made the U.S. ski team, which is a good story. I could also tell you the story that the reason that I made that U.S. ski team is because I am good at dissociating pain. So it's not much of a success story because I only did that because I was a dissociator. Now, which story feels better?
Right. Well, this brings it into a question about aging, and one person, I think this comes from Yumi Doi from San Francisco, and she says that she would like to regain her senses, her eyesight, hearing, and vibrant body. Is there any way we can reverse our physical deterioration that we associate with aging?
Absolutely, 100%. And not only that, aging is not a prerequisite before death. We could stay young and vital forever. You do not have to decline in health in order to cease to physically exist. Aging is something that happens when we've adopted thought patterns that keep us separate from source, but that energy cannot fill up our body, and thus it begins to deteriorate. So we can regain, like I said, plasticity of the physical dimension is an absolute. You could regain your looks. You could turn into a 13-year-old if you really wanted to. Most of us don't believe we can, and so we can't. But the question when we're starting to lose our senses is this. What am I not wanting to hear? What am I not wanting to see? Because the only reason that you would manifest a deterioration of those organs is if there was indeed something you don't want to hear, something indeed you would not want to see.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Susan from Vancouver, British Columbia says, my question relates to our cousins of light, all those not in body, and our relationship to them. How can we develop our perception of communication, connection, and love for these beings in concrete ways of strengthening the connection?
I always joke about the fact that I'm the worst person to ask this question to because it's kind of like asking Michael Jordan how he plays basketball. I have a very difficult time teaching people how to come into a connection with their extrasensory abilities, seeing as how I was born that way, and so I never had to develop and thus chart the territory between not having the abilities and having them. But if you are, I think the best way to get into contact with these higher light bodies is to raise your frequency. So regardless of whether you're talking to somebody that can tell you concrete steps as to how to go from not seeing auras to seeing auras, for example, the truth still remains the same, that these beings exist at a higher dimensional frequency, and so in order to become aware of them, you have to raise your own frequency. And so to do that, you have to pay attention to your emotions, because if you understand emotions, emotions are the indication of what vibration you hold. So the higher your emotions, higher states of emotions are things like passion and joy, the higher your state of emotion, the higher your frequency is, and thus the more access you have to these interdimensional beings. So in the beginning, you will have no conscious awareness of them. Then you start incrementally raising your frequency, and then numbers start showing up for you all over the place, so physical signs of their existence. You may see 11:11 on the clock constantly. You may be in the right place at the right time and be noticing synchronicities. That's interaction with them. And the higher and higher it gets, suddenly you start to see light orbs in the corner of your vision.
Mm-hmm.
And And when you trace them, at first they'll disappear. And then there will come a day when you have continually practiced this, that your vibration will be high enough that you will turn over, and instead of one of these orbs disappearing when you look at it, it will remain there. And you will start to perceive features, and you will start to hear their communication by virtue of clairaudience. But most of us want a straight route without the answer, which I continue to give, which is you have to increase your own vibration. They say, no, there has to be a trick that I can do that without having to work on all my issues relative to my therapist. But that's never going to be my answer.
Right. There is no way of raising our vibration without working on the lower aspects and releasing them, and our fears and our beliefs and our shadow side.
Yes.
So, and you can't have it both ways. We can't.
And my favorite thing to tell people, too, is that there's nothing that you have to do in order to see these things.
Right.
What you have to do is kind of clear the filament off of the camera lens. So this is why shadow work works so well. Think of shadows, all of these things, my issues with my grandparents, my problems with my not beneficial beliefs, are like an anchor that is holding a buoy to the bottom of the ocean. Now, if you let go of that anchor, you're not going to have to swim the buoy to the top of the water. It's going to just bounce to the top. So all the shadow work you do is incrementally raising your vibration. It's not like you have to do the shadow work and then take some kind of effort to raise your vibration. It's just raising your vibration is the natural frequency of you. So if you clear things out of the way, all of your shadow aspects, these limiting beliefs and things, you will naturally experience these kinds of things which I currently experience, things like being able to see the energetic nature of the universe, being able to see auras, being able to talk to thought forms. That's a natural state of the human. Not much work has to be done.
Right. I love it. There's another question here. This might be a loaded question. Is there such a thing as a divine plan?
Yes, we set forth a great many plans from our non-physical perspective. So even the life that you're living is a divine plan, but you can always rewrite the plan because nothing is written in stone. That's part of the beauty. You may have had a divine plan for your life. The universe may have had a divine plan for itself in general, but as you are down here, you are amending that plan by virtue of every desire that you give rise to.
Well, Teal, there are dozens and dozens of questions, and we could probably go on for a long time. But I'm thinking that we might want to start wrapping it up towards the 1:30, and give you an opportunity to talk about where you can be found and your upcoming event and your book and your website and all of that. Are there any other things that you'd like to really communicate during this last period of our conversation?
Just that we make too much of this. I really think that it is important for everyone listening to understand that the purpose of the life you are living here is that you are in a vibration of joy. We don't have to worry so much about everything else when we're willing to make that the object of our very life. So your purpose is no different right now than enjoying the food that you've put in your mouth. It's no different than enjoying that sport which you love to play. It's no different than falling in love with your children. That is your purpose. You're not missing it. If you are feeling joy in your life, you are not missing your purpose. The only way you can miss your purpose is if you are prioritizing things other than joy. So how simple does that get? Life becomes very simple when you understand that that is the purpose of your life here. And when you understand it's the purpose of your life here, then you can make it a priority and stop doing all the things you're doing in your life to try to justify your own existence. It's already justified. Your life is justified. Your existence is justified. You are justified. So we need to stop trying to justify our existence and just figure out how to go in the direction of what feels good to us as individuals. It is really as simple as that. And every other question that has been asked of me in this session or could ever be asked of me, you will understand the answer to those questions without it needing to even come through my mouth the minute you prioritize your joy. You will line up with everything you have ever asked for.
Absolutely beautiful. I can't imagine it being said any better. Well, Teal, would you share with us where you can be found and where your next event will be in Santa Barbara?
Oh, good grief. Sure, I don't even know where exactly it is in Santa Barbara because I'm the kind of person that shows up the day of and just gets driven to the location and stands up and starts talking.
I love it. I love it.
Yes, but I will be in Santa Barbara on April 20th. We're doing the synchronization workshops, and those workshops are super fun for anybody who's attended them. It's not just about me talking for hours and hours. It's also about the connections you make with other people who are at a like frequency. And I'll be doing many of them. We have one scheduled for Santa Fe. I don't know the exact date for that, but it's probably going to be a month and a half after that. So I'll be in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and then I will be traveling all over the world, basically, until I decide otherwise, holding these workshops and interacting with people. And you can find all of this information on my website, which is www.thespiritualcatalyst.com. I also put out a Saturday video, which is weekly. It's the Ask Teal video, where people submit questions, and I take a question to answer in a video format. So that comes out every single Saturday, so anyone who wants to subscribe to that YouTube channel can watch those videos. And I'm on Facebook as well. And in the future, I will be in more and more and more venues, so it'll be much easier to connect with me for years to come.
Wonderful. Well, Teal, thank you so much for being on this first show of Creating 5D and talking to us all. And I just can't thank you enough for being here and sharing your beauty with us.
Well, thank you so much for being a venue for me to do so.
All right. We can talk again sometime, you know.
Of course.
All right. Good night, or goodbye.